Sahel is a land of encounters, the end of one world and the beginning of another, the narrow belt that closes the gates of the desert and opens the heart of the savannah, which heralds the jungles of Africa. But even beyond geographic considerations, Sahel is an idea of survival, of men who fight every day to overcome the threshold of death awaiting them. Because this immense land of open plains and robust stony grounds is one of the severest geographies on the planet. Surviving in Sahel is an exercise anchored to life, an invitation to optimism, the palpable demonstration of being and existing, participation in the perverse game of living. It's just a question of talent. Sahel, the wounded frontier, beholds a handful of stories about these men and women who inhabit the Sahel Strip from the shores of the Atlantic Ocean in Mauritania to the shores of the Red Sea in the Gulf of Aden. They are stories about 21st century men and women who are struggling to overcome desertification and the slow abandoning of the nomadic life, who are resisting the disappearance of a world dominated by music, by genies who inhabit the depths of the rivers, by ancestral architectural forms, by art. A peculiar and sincere culture that is fading by the hand of modernity. A modernity that is approaching Sahel, like the rest of the planet, loaded with progress and confusion, of hope for the future, and of dreams that will most likely never come true. It's not a coincidence that Africa bears the name of a woman. According to United Nations statistics, 80% of productive labor on the continent lies in the hands of women. The intricate labyrinth of ethnic groups, languages, and crossbreeding are owed to the women who have kept them alive despite the difficulties. In Sahel, this statement has become a general rule. Madame Bamba is the most influential person in the traditional fish market in Nouakchott, Mauritania. She buys 90% of all the manta ray and shark that is caught in the country by traditional methods. The fishermen come to sell from all over, from as far as the Arguin Bank in the north. She salts the fish, dries it, and exports it in large shipments that she sends to Ghana once a month.
My husband lives in Ghana. He's very old. He comes for a week, makes sure that everything is the way he likes it, and then he leaves again for 3 months. I take care of the business and the house. I like to watch television and listen to music from Ghana, but I don't have time to. This work is very tiring, and I get very, very worn out.
In addition to receiving those who offer their merchandise in her drying room, Madame Bamba walks along the beach every morning in search of the best catches. Prices vary daily, and she negotiates in person. 80% of the jobs that come from the sea in Mauritania have their origin in traditional fishing. With her exports to Ghana, Madame Bamba alone creates work for 500 people. Around her and the hundreds of women who work on the beach, a series of small interrelated jobs are being done that give life to this market.
Yes, yes, we all work together. The women and the fishermen. When somebody needs help, the rest of us go and help. Before, no one salted the fish here. I was the first person to do so, and I have taught everyone who now works with me.
Another example of hard work and determination is Fanta Diallo, who has been working for 2 years in order to save enough money to pay for the expenses of her trip to France. She's a law student, and her dream is to study in Europe. Her family does not have a lot of money, and in order to pay for her studies, she trades between Bamako and Timbuktu. During the rainy season, the Niger River acquires the water level needed by the big barges to travel up and down regularly. During this time, which lasts about 4 months, Fanta makes between 8 and 10 trips, which at the end of the season should secure her enough money to cover her first expenses for her trip to France. She wants to finish college and return to her country in order to fight for women's rights in Mali.
Women's rights? I wonder if women in Mali have rights. It is true that Mali has signed the international conventions in favor of equality between men and women, but honestly, the situation is different. In Mali, rights are created to suit men. They are the ones that have all the power, and women are behind them. They monopolize everything. That is where we really are.
Aside from Fanta, there are hundreds of other women who travel the river daily. It's a common scene that has repeated itself on the Niger since man can remember. Women have taken care of the small trade business, buying here and selling there on a traveling merry-go-round up and down the river. Independent women travel with merchandise and children, surviving with everything on their backs in a non-stop nomadic lifestyle. Sahel has been and is still a strategic meeting place for 2 radically different forms of understanding the world: sedentary farming and nomadic pasturing. Sahel is the exact border where the territory of the nomads ends and the lands of labor begin. A frontier wounded by centuries of conflicts with a vanquished end. Nomadic life is ending, the caravans and the large herds are disappearing with the same rhythm as always, slowly but impassively. Mama Maounde is a Nuodabe Pel of Niger. He's 34 years old. He has 3 wives and 3 children. 2 of his wives, his brothers and his parents, live in the countryside with the animals. He spends part of the year living a nomadic life with his family and the rest of the year in Niamey, where he runs the Association of Nomadic Shepherds of Niger. The Pel people are the ancient nomadic shepherds who have been scattered throughout Western Africa for centuries, and the Uodabe is their most traditional group. They inhabit the strip of pastures that come before the desert, between Tagwa and Agadez. During the dry season, they move their camps from well to well in search of water and fresh grass for feeding the animals. When the rains come, if they are abundant, moving is reduced and life adopts a certain languid and quiet rhythm. Ali lives in the Mauritanian desert. He is the last member of his family to preserve the nomadic tradition. The rest have emigrated to the city or abroad. His wife Deida and her brothers have stayed with him in the desert. Together, they work hard to survive in a hostile environment, which is determined to throw them out forever. The 2 devastating droughts during the 80s decimated the animals to the point that even man could not survive. More than 70% of the Mauritanian population lives off the pastures. In 20 years, the nomads have been reduced to half.
Everything that is important to us is here, in the camp. I have also tried city life. I bought a wheat grinder and worked hard, but I had no other choice but to return to the desert. I could not adapt to the car fumes or to the fast pace. Everyone wanted wheat at the same time, and I only had one machine. I don't want any other life but this one. But my children want to study. The money that my wife and I earned from the sale of animals pays for our children's education. Our older children live in Nouakchott, and they only come back on vacation in order not to forget about us.
My dream is for it to rain for days and days on end, until the dry land becomes an immense green meadow and our children come back to live with us forever. I dream this every day.
Ali and Deida have held out, and the reward is not wealth, but dignity. Dignity carved from strokes of silence and days lost without traces of water. The dignity of knowing how to look death in the eye with determination and to move on unharmed, stronger, and still be proud to inhabit the desert.
I have not gone to school, but I listen carefully to what people say. I have memorized a phrase that a foreigner once read to me. He said that walking is in itself an encouraging movement. One's head becomes just as vigorous as one's legs. He who walks gives free rein to his fantasy, his imagination, and his thoughts. He who walks this way has no possessions. Possessions require a sedentary life. You have to stay where you are. In the desert, since nothing owns us, we own everything.
In Sahel, the senses do not always lie. Not all the sparkles of water that appear to confuse our eyes are hallucinations. Water is always a miracle, but in the solitude of the desert, it is something more than just a thread from which life and death hang. In Sahel, water is an obsession, a perversely immobile point housed in the center of a delirium. It's an idea, a waiting lover that offers itself to the traveler like a sunstroke of desire. Sahel means shore, and there was a time when this strip was the bank of an enormous interior sea that occupied the Sahara Desert. Like a memory of that remote time, it has remained a discrete chain of lakes that century by century, year by year, has been giving up space to the attack of the desert. But the two great waterways that keep Sahel alive are the Nile and Niger rivers. The Niger is a tenacious and suicidal river. It rises from the mountains of Conakry in Guinea, and instead of flowing into the sea, like all other rivers do, it heads towards the desert. It seems to choose its own erratic desert, one that defies the laws of gravity and geography. Its waters seem to run for kilometers towards a definite end. But then, near Timbuktu, and without prior notice, the river turns, making a sharp curve to avoid the desert and flow into the sea. The Niger has given in to man's logic, as if its resistance was nothing more than a concession to the whims of cartography. The Nile, on the other hand, is a coherent river that searches for the sea without contemplation, and Khartoum is its capital, installed in the heart of Sahel, at one of the most important geographic enclaves of Africa. It's the exact point where the Blue Nile and White Nile come together, the meeting point of two paths that for centuries drove geographers and explorers of the Western world mad. Which was the true Nile? What path should be followed to find the authentic source of the river? This corner of Africa was one of the gates to the territory of dreams and adventure. Every year, hundreds of thousands of sub-Saharan people decide to abandon their country to begin the uncertain journey undertaken by any immigrant. They dream about Europe, the promised land seen in movies and television. Many others decide to stay in order to deal with the present, without fleeing or more adventures, just those of their daily routine. But who are these men? What are their desires, fears, or impossible dreams? Andre Ekane is 19 years old and was born in Cameroon. He works at the Rio Cinema in Yamena, although he really is a soccer player. He plays for the Postal 2000 team in Chad's First Division. He trained to be a soccer player in Yaoundé, Cameroon's capital. His dream is to play soccer in Europe someday. He's sent several letters to the French teams in Bordeaux and Nantes for a tryout, but nobody has replied. He has decided to leave for France. He will cross the desert through Libya and then will take a boat to Europe. He knows how dangerous this can be, but he can only think about playing in Europe.
When I reach Europe, I would like to play for a French team, especially on the Bordeaux team, for 2 years. Then, I'm going to try to go to Spain or England. In England, I want to play for Liverpool, and in Spain, for Real Madrid. All this, if that is what God wants. If I'm lucky, in 2 or 3 weeks I could be on the coast, and I'll just have to wait for a good opportunity to cross over to Europe. I dream about seeing the coast from a distance. People say that departures are usually made at night. When they see the first lights on the shore, people shout with joy. That light. For months I've been waking up during the night seeing that light. I sometimes thought it was the coal projector still burning, but then I would remember what it was and the light would disappear. But I couldn't sleep anymore. People also say that many people never make it, and that their boats sink, and they never reach the coast. I'm going to make it. I'll make it there, with the help of God.
If there were a place in Africa to flee from, it would be from the cities. Niamey is the exception, but not because it is beautiful or a pleasant city. What sub-Saharan African capital deserves adjectives like those? Niamey's charm lies in its image as a rural capital. No one has emigrated from the country to the city, but instead they have taken the country to the city. No more than 5% of the nation's total population lives in Niamey, and of the rest, 20% are nomadic. In Niamey, modernity is made up of islands that transform it into something somewhat less than a city, but somewhat more than a dusty village. When entering Bamako, like most of the large African capitals, it gives you the sensation of having arrived after a bombing. Everything is dilapidated and chaotic. The center of Bamako is a large market without limits, where you can find everything from umbrellas to spare parts for a car. Bamako preserves something that Western cities have lost. It's alive. There are people in the streets and things happen, although they may not be police pursuits or multiple murders. Yamena is a convalescent city after surviving more than 30 years of war. Its streets and markets are recuperating with vitality from the conflict that is repeated all along the Sahel Strip. The confrontation between the Arab Muslims of the north and the animists and Christians of the south. Chad has been demolished by this conflict. Human remains and metal war scraps are still scattered throughout the country as a monument to the stupidity of man. Music is the heart of Sahel. A unique rhythm exists in Africa, a cadence for setting space and time, a kind of complicity for putting order in chaos with improvised sounds. There are no palpable boundaries that segregate music from life or religion from daily life. Music is the path for an encounter with ancestors, the vehicle towards lust and trance. Africans use music to fight against illness. Music coordinates communal tasks and celebrates death. Music is the umbilical cord that unites man with the rest of the world. Lagare is one of the best percussionists in Mali. His djembe is famous all throughout Bamako and along the Niger River. He usually plays on the street and at weddings, baptisms, and street festivals, but he has also played with the best musicians in the country. His dream is to play in Europe someday.
Sometimes when I'm sleeping, I wake up in the middle of the night and I hear the djembe. It is like a nightmare. I cannot do anything. The sound resounds in my head. I only hear an insistent sound.
Lobi Traoré is an excellent disciple of Ali Farka Touré, the most international Malian musician. Ali Farka Touré won a Grammy Award alongside Ray Cooder. Together, Ali Farka Touré and Lobi Traoré have been the driving force of a musical style that mixes jazz with traditional Niger River rhythms.
For me, no one trade is better than another. We are all important and equal. Musicians, drivers, mechanics, government workers. We are all equally important. God grants each individual a function. He gave me this one. I was created to play, and music is more important than gold or diamonds.
Umusima Yogo is a great Malian musician, an artist whose songs reflect women's struggle for equal rights. She is a griot, one of the jongleurs who has evolved towards less conventional forms. In traditional music, women usually sing while men play the instruments. Despite evolution, this role distribution has been maintained up until today.
Malian women work very hard. Aside from housework, we work as traders in order to support our children. This is what makes women suffer most. We have no rights, and not only that, we are forced to do our husband's work. The men do not take care of us. We have to do everything. There are many women who have to do menial jobs, and this does not give us self-respect.
Umu has divorced twice and has 4 children who live with their fathers. Her obsession for equality is not easy to pursue in a world strictly dominated by men. Being a woman, an artist, and a rebel is difficult in a society like that of Mali. Along with Dakar and Abidjan, Bamako is one of the hot points for West African music. Music is played in the streets, at baptisms, at weddings, and also at the clubs where the young people of the city go out at night. Toumani Diabaté is the best kora artist in the world. The kora is a traditional instrument, a kind of African harp. He gets sounds out of the kora that no one else can.
I am Toumani Diabaté, son of Sidiki Diabaté and Neni Koita. May they rest in peace. I've traveled around the world 4 times and participated in more than 2,000 concerts. I play the kora, and I have been a griot from birth. For me, music is a way of life. According to my elders, my family has done nothing else but play music. And this dates back to the Mandinga Empire. We do not have gold or diamonds. Music is our wealth.
Sahel is a hostile world that man has domesticated in order to make it equal to the gods. It has been the alchemy of centuries of mud cities sustained to nourish the mystery of its longevity. Cities that have remained standing like an affront to the yearning of time. These cities are Yené, Chinguetti, Harar, and Timbuktu. Perhaps Timbuktu is the city most anchored in myth. Timbuktu is still alive, crumbling, but alive. Its culture, tradition, and history are the riches that give it life. When the present is uncertain, only the past justifies believing in the future. From a distance, the city of Yené can be seen on the horizon among the waters, like the image of a doré etching. The minarets and pinnacles stand out over the terraces of the medieval city that from far away seems to be walled in, but is not. It's the view of the houses that are so close together around the mosque that it produces a sensation of coming to a very old place. During the European Middle Ages, Yené was the axis that the commercial relationship between the desert and the savannah turned on. Timbuktu was the gate to the great journey towards the Mediterranean, and Yené was the first major stop where boats were put to port when the river level would rise or fall. Chinguetti is the seventh holy city of Islam, a dying city in the middle of the Mauritanian desert. The only thing left of its splendor is the memory of a glorious past and a certain pride against the encroaching desert. Thousands of wise men and poets from all over the Arab world settled here. Chinguetti was a pearl in the middle of the desert. Each year, millions of religious followers would pass through this city on their journey to Mecca. There were 11 mosques, many Quranic schools, and libraries where thousands of manuscripts were kept. Ethiopia is a Christian island surrounded by a sea of Muslim countries. Harar is an island within this island, a Muslim city buried deep in the heart of Ethiopian Christianity. Harar is a difficult city to classify. It's the fourth holy city of Islam and houses almost 100 mosques within its walls, the largest concentration per square kilometer anywhere in the world. Alongside the numerous mosques, however, there is also an abundance of bars. And at the bars, as well as on the street, during the day and at night, the women control everything that happens in the city. They mainly control the production and sale of chat, a plant that is a stimulant that marks the rhythm of life in Harar. Waleto Gebre has lived in Harar for the last 10 years. Ever since she was a little girl, her dream was to become a famous movie actress. She never misses a film being premiered in the city. She looks at the actresses on the billboards and thinks that it could be her. But what she really does is sell chat in the Makonnen Square in Harar. Chat is a cultural stimulant. It's very unusual for someone to take it alone, since it is essentially a social drug. It gives one energy and improves one's memory, but it also produces depression, insomnia, and sexual impotence.
Some people take it to work better, and others take it to study. And there are also people who take it on weekends when going out with their girlfriends or while having a few drinks to stay awake. When cultivating chat, it must be well cared for during the first 6 months. The weeds growing around it should be cut, and the plant must be watered often. It is also good to fumigate them with smoke, which helps the plant grow good leaves.
If women are the backbone of Sahel and music is the heart, then spirituality and the belief in gods and genies is the spine of hope. The past is a dream, and the future is only a possibility. In Africa, people live in the continuous present, which does not run or pass. It does not adapt to fool tomorrow. It is not divided into instances or moments. It is not lost, nor is it avoided. Time lies only in the hands of God, and the God of Islam dominates everything in Sahel. But it is a crossbred God who came from Arabia overflowing with absolute truths, He was reborn and adorned with other gods and foreign spirits, with fetishes and holy men who protect man during life and who guide him in death towards the heavenly paradise. Because in Africa, in the eternal Africa of myths, death does not exist. Death is nothing more than an invention by man, which renews time in order to continue seeking out life. And although the future is only a possibility, Sahel is a trail of hope for what is to come. And it cannot be any other way when 70% of the population is under the age of 15. Hassan and Ibrahim are two Tuareg teenagers who go to school together in Agadez, although their parents fought on different sides during the war between the Tuaregs and the Niger government. Hassan's family fought very actively in favor of the rebels. On the other hand, Ibrahim's family was pro-government. They have lived in the city for many years and are in favor of keeping on good terms with the government. But these two families have something in common. Both have always been dedicated to the Azalai, the caravan of salt. The Azalai, one of the last big commercial salt routes, used to start off from Agadez, and still does. From November to January, hundreds, thousands of camels cross the way between Agadez and the mines of Bilma to further distribute the salt to the rest of the country. After 10 years of war between the rebel Tuaregs and the Niger government, the Azalai caravan travels again peacefully. Neither Hassan nor Ibrahim have ever accompanied their parents on the caravan. The war made the way dangerous, and therefore they did not dare to travel with them. But this year it will be different. This year, for the first time, the caravans will depart in peace, and children will leave the school for a few weeks to start learning their parents' profession. Hassan wants to become a lawyer, and Ibrahim a doctor. Their respective parents support them as they want their children to be able to enter a world that they have never known. But they also want them not to forget. Their parents want them to fight for the world that they belong to, a world in danger of extinction in the face of the advancing modern world.
Since the moment our parents told us we were going to travel with the caravan, we have spoken of nothing else but that. We tried to imagine how it would be to walk along for one day after the other with the animals, how the nights would pass learning how to guide us by the stars. And now, there we were, together at last. We do know it is still a long way to Bilma, but from now on we will walk close to one another. Our professor told us once that friendship consisted in giving your friend the weapon that causes wounds, as he will use it to defend us. I hope to always stand by Hassan to defend him.
The Tuareg live in a universe that is changing very quickly. A kind of reality that has nothing to do with the one lived by their parents is waiting for Hassan and Ibrahim. In that future they are supposed to build, there must be a necessary if uncertain place for tradition. The Tuareg's tradition is slavery, pillage, an eternal war against everyone, and even against themselves. But this tradition is also a synonym for dignity, freedom, and identity against the abyss of the future. So it's time for them to find their own place in this world. There is a corner of the sea on the coast of Africa that is part of the desert. It looks like a no man's land. Its wild symmetry gives the impression of geographic mismanagement, an absence of boundaries and distances. But nothing in the desert is accidental. Nothing is chaotic or left to the whims of time. It's a perfect embrace, a communion of sand and water in dunes that head toward the sea from the heart of the continent. The waters off the northern coast of Mauritania, at the same latitude as the Sahel, is one of the richest fishing areas in the world. Over the past 30 years, with the complicity of the local government, enormous commercial fishing ships sailing under international flags have exhausted these waters. At the same time, all along the coast, from Nouakchott to Nouadhibou, thousands of men earn their livings by traditional fishing methods, in direct competition with the large industrial fishing ships. It is an unequal fight that metaphorically takes shape in the Bay of Nouadhibou, where a handful of these large ships are slowly disintegrating. Sometimes mechanical breakdowns or having run aground, other times unpaid fines, have aided time in creating this unexpected nautical graveyard. On the surface, there are more than 100 ships. Underwater, they say there are close to 1,000. It's a tragic and beautiful setting, an aesthetic of rusty perversity. A place that reflects the contrast between the commercial fishing industry and the traditional fishermen. The predominance of steel over survival and solidarity. On the other side of Sahel, a warm, calm sea dozes. Djibouti is one of those countries invented by man to satisfy his desires for adventure, to keep the mysterious flame alive in a geography that does not appear to be from this world. It's a country carved by fire and water, chiseled by the whims of the gods of hell. Djibouti is located where nobody can ignore it, in the indispensable corner of the Horn of Africa, right where the continent borders Arabia. It's a strategic location, the necessary passage to the Orient from the Suez Canal. In ancient times, it was the meeting point for Indian, Arab, and Greek sailors. Today, it is still a territory that welcomes smugglers and adventurers. Nights in Sahel are long. Poetry and music grip the palm grove, and the sound of the tidinit reaches the highest dunes. The night celebrations are an excuse for ambiguity. The words of the songs evoke impossible pleasures and great epic poems about legendary heroes. They are religious and profane songs about battles, games, and nostalgia for a lost time. It's like everything on the Sahel frontier, a crossbred of music, born out of the constant crossing of never-ending paths. The women of Sahel are waiting, like the land, like the desert. They seem immobile, eternally waiting. The women are the ones who remain, constant in a world that is slowly surrendering. But Sahel is an immense mother, an eternal wife for men with distant eyes. In Sahel, there will always be a mother to continue nursing life.